This is a Fox News alert, and more than 10 hours and counting. Senator Rand Paul launching an old-fashioned filibuster on the Senate floor. And at this hour, well, he is still going. Right now, Senator John Barrasso is giving him a little bit of a break, but Senator Paul trying to delay the confirmation of CIA Director nominee John Brennan. Senator Paul using the filibuster to protest President Obama's authority to kill Americans with drones. Senators from both parties, though, have been helping the senator out. His filibuster is shaping up to be one of the longest in U.S. history. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Good to be with you.
Your thoughts watching filibuster? It's been a while since we've seen this.
I'm really proud of Rand Paul. I'm proud of him for standing up for the rights of Americans and the Constitution. I'm proud of him for pushing the Senate and actually having a genuine filibuster, which is the right of a senator. And I'm proud of him for getting all of us, as you are tonight, to pay some attention. This is a serious question. We've evolved into a world where the President of the United States basically signs off on killing people on a remarkable frequency. And the question is whether or not that could, A, ever be applied domestically, and B, whether it could be applied to Americans unless they're active enemy combatants. And I think it's worthy of a law that prohibits that kind of decision. And we don't want to give anybody power to kill an American citizen without due process of law.
Are you surprised how few senators have sort of rallied up to help him all of it? We've seen Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Barrasso, Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat, helped him. But this is a body of 100 senators.
Well, I think more will come in because I think courage ultimately attracts others. And I think Rand Paul is showing a level of courage that is historic, and that will be remembered for a long time. I mean, if you're a civil libertarian liberal or if you're a constitutionalist conservative, both wings have to be proud of Rand Paul standing up for the constitutional rights of Americans.
Well, who likes these drones giving the president power without any sort of check, without any sort of authority? And there's some question, we'll discuss it later, of, you know, it says if there's some, it talks about imminence, and imminence being defined very broadly, I might add.
Oh, the imminence rule is nonsense. I mean, if you read carefully what the White House spokesman and others have said, there are no practical rules here except the president or his designee. Because remember, presidents don't normally sit there and go, oh yes, let me spend the next 3 hours studying this. They delegate it to somebody who walks in and says, let's kill this guy. And I think most of the killings have been legitimate, but I think as a long-term pattern, it's amazingly dangerous. And there ought to be a set of procedures. I think Senator Feinstein, for example, a Democrat, has been exactly right to demand information from the Intelligence Committee.
But she's not helping out. I mean, well, you know, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of senators who are not. Are we to assume the senators who aren't there helping Senator Rand Paul to be in support of the drone program where a president?
No, I think a lot of senators who are watching tonight in amazement. I don't remember. You may know. I don't remember the last time there was a genuine filibuster. This is a very healthy thing to see a U.S. senator stand to it, huh?
Are we to assume the ones who aren't there think this is a great program, this drone program, and look, giving sort of unfettered authority?
Not necessarily. I think you have a lot of folks who this is just not their style. They're not comfortable.
They just let it go?
Yeah, they're just not comfortable with this level.
What, standing up for issues?
I don't want to go quite that far, but let me just say.
Come on, this is their job.
I was in once upon a time one of the most aggressive floor debaters in the U.S. House.
No, you gotta be kidding.
There were at least 400 members of the House who thought I was crazy because they just couldn't imagine doing that. But I believe what Rand Paul's doing is both historic in procedure for the Senate and historic in raising a constitutional issue for the country. And I commend him for this level of leadership. And as you yourself said, he's beginning to gradually attract a bipartisan group.
If he sits down, I understand it's over. I mean, he can't even sit and rest. The minute he sits down...
He can only sit if somebody else, if he yields time. That's why Senator Barrasso came in to help him. I mean, sometimes you have to take a bathroom break or something. Well, you get a friend to show up and talk
Senator
a little while.
Mike Lee told me in the green room that he couldn't take a bathroom break. So I
think he yielded to Barrasso for a few minutes.
All right, well, we'll get that. I guess that's a little inconsequential as we're debating his bathroom break, I guess. But I'll take the blame for that one. Anyway, we're going to be keeping an eye on the filibuster. But Speaker Gingrich, right now we want to ask you about something else. Republicans insist the president is trying to make sure the sequester cuts are as painful as he promised. And now a leaked Agriculture Department email seems to, some at least, to back up that claim. The email was sent to an agency regional director. He was asking how much latitude he has in making cuts. Now, this is the email response he got from the Agriculture Department's budget office. However you manage that reduction, you need to make sure you are not contradicting what we said the impact would be. So what exactly does that mean? Does that mean all that pain? Your thought on that email?
I think, first of all, the Obama strategy was maximum pain for political gain. And I think he's been caught in it. I think it's hurt his popularity dramatically. It's going to get worse. I don't think the Ag Department memo is the most amazing. The most amazing is closing the White House tours. I mean, here you have a president who spends over $900,000 of your money going on a golf vacation. You have a president who keeps all sorts of people on staff at high prices at the White House. And they're telling the American people, the one thing we're going to cut is your tour?
Well, actually, it's funny. I talked to some people involved with the tours, and it's a very sort of different perspective from the inside. Is that they need to figure out what they could cut because they may have to do overtime, for instance, for other departments. And it seemed like that would be a good place to start. But the funny thing about it, the people who are complaining aren't people like you and outside, but they're actually people in the White House who are complaining because they have relatives coming into town, or they've got congressmen. So it's sort of funny. It's sort of the squeeze play on the people doing the tours in the White House from within and from without. But they're trying to, I mean, they're trying to figure out a solution, and this has sort of been the poster child.
Let me just make two quick observations. First, Speaker John Boehner made the correct point that the House had prepared for the sequester, and they are not slowing down any tours at the Capitol because they had thought it through and they'd done the right thing to protect the American people. Second, I think, you know, if the White House would tell us how much it cost, I suspect we could find 3 or 4 people who'd put up the price. We can subsidize the tours. So
are you announcing tonight that you'll start a fund to pay for the
White House to tell us what it takes? We will raise the money to enable the White House tours to continue, period. I have no doubt about this, because it's just silly. Of all the things you could cut in the White House, whether it's the chef, I mean, tonight the president's taking a bunch of guys over to the Jefferson for a very expensive dinner.
To one of the greatest hotels in Washington, I should tell people, owned by Connie Milstein, but great hotel.
So I'm
expensive.
Just saying, I'm not against going to the Jefferson.
He paid for it, by the way.
Personally?
That's what I'm told. At least that was in our computer. We have urgents in the computers that said that he was.
The president was personally going to pay for it.
I was surprised, but that's what I read.
This is wonderful. Maybe he would also,
I mean, maybe that's wrong.
Look, maybe he'd like to reimburse the $920,000 for his golf vacation. They could apply that to keeping open the White House tours.
All right, let me go on to something else. You were talking to Laura Ingraham. You said you made a crack about CPAC. You're not a big fan of CPAC anymore?
Well, I'm going to speak there. I think CPAC serves an important function, but I think it's lost some of its ideological edge and some of its focus, and I don't understand some of its decisions.
You're going to get booed if you're saying all this stuff before you speak.
No, I don't. Look, I don't ever operate out of fear. I think CPAC attracts a lot of young people. It is a very dynamic place for people looking at the future. But if you go back and you look at CPAC in the 70s, they had a clear sense of mission, a clear sense of purpose. One of Ronald Reagan's most important speeches was given in February of 1975 at CPAC when he said we need bold colors, not pale pastels, and he talked about the nature of conservatism. I'm looking forward to Jeb Bush's speech, which is going to be Friday night. I hope that he matches that kind of standard. It's the Ronald Reagan dinner. But all I'm suggesting is, you know, I'll give you an example. Look, Chris Christie, I can criticize him. I don't think he should have hugged the president quite that much. But the fact is, in a very democratic state with a very strong state employees union, Chris Christie has shown enormous courage and has done things that are remarkable.
Well, he was the keynote speaker last year, so is that hug thing, was that the kiss of death with CPAC?
I don't understand why they didn't invite him back. I mean, I'm just using that as an example.
But Governor McDonald's not speaking either.
Well, then that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Governor McDonald is a very popular governor of Virginia who you can argue about his transportation plan, but overall, he's been a terrific conservative. So that's why I just raise questions. I don't understand the internal dynamics of CPAC, who's in charge, how they make their decisions, but some of them I would frankly question.
You mentioned Governor Jeb Bush. Is this sort of a coming out party for him? Are we going to see him? Is this a 2016 signal?
Look, it might be, but 2016 is so far away.
No, it's not.
Oh, sure. And I know it's not for you, but it is in the real world. Trust me.
The real world. What world do I live in?
you live in the world of Washington media, where we've the second the last election's over, we got to worry about the next election. Jeb Bush is a very talented person who was a very good governor of Florida. He has been a very important part of the evolution of the Republican Party. I think it's great that he's going to be involved. I also think there are going to be a lot of very, very competent, aggressive people running, whether it is from his home state, Marco Rubio, or it's John Kasich, or it is Scott Walker, or Rand Paul, who you're watching tonight. It's going to be a very exciting time from now to 2016.
Any women in that mix?
I think you could see Susana Martinez, the governor of New Mexico, who I think is very, very impressive. Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, and frankly, Kelly Ayotte, the senator from New Hampshire.
You mentioned Florida. Governor Rick Scott has decided to expand the Medicaid, which is after he said he wouldn't. I think Governor Chris Christie likewise. I can't remember what his first. But Governor Rick Perry says he's not taking it.
The great thing about the federalist system is that 50 governors have to make decisions for 50 states. My bias is with Rick Perry, but I don't second guess a governor of a state who makes a decision that he thinks is right for his state. That's why you have a federalist system, and that's why the 10th Amendment is important. We'll see over the next 4 or 5 years which person made the right decision.
The dinner tonight that we had, that was in Washington President, we just spoke about that with the Jefferson Hotel. Speaker Boehner and Senator McConnell, both Republican leaders, weren't invited.
I don't think that's bad. I mean, I went to a lot of dinners with Bill Clinton where we didn't necessarily have leaders invited. Back when I was the whip, for example.
I was just going to say you were a leader, though.
No, but back when I was the whip, I mean, we had dinners that didn't involve the rest of the leadership. Anything which increases a bipartisan conversation in this city is helpful. I hope this is a useful dinner. My only hope would be that the president had listened as much as he talked, and that he thought later about what he heard. We have to break out of the current gridlock to be a healthy country. That's going to require both sides listening to the other. And if this dinner helps, what I didn't understand, candidly, was why they didn't meet at the White House. I don't know if that was the Republican request.
I didn't know if it was a sequester issue. Maybe the chef is laid off that you were talking about. Maybe he got furloughed.
If the chef were laid off, we could afford to do the White House tours. I'm sure that's not the problem.
So you thought that was odd? No,
because the White House is a great historic site. In my experience, every time I went down to see a president at the White House, whether it was, and I served starting with Jimmy Carter through several presidencies, it's pretty impressive, and it's a pretty powerful place to be, and presidents are great hosts, and the White House is a great venue. So I didn't quite know why you would leave the White House to go to a hotel, but maybe the Republicans felt better not being on the president's grounds and wanted to be in a neutral site.
I thought it was interesting. I mean, we're now into the second term that the president has a sort of breaking bread, and he probably has done. He's had beer summits, and in the early days we've had different events. But he sent Senator Biden up at the end of the year, having to do with the tax increase, and it was so apparent to me that he had no relationship with anyone on Capitol Hill. So he had to sort of outsource it to the vice president, who has a fantastic relationship on Capitol Hill because he served in the U.S. Senate. I wonder if he's suddenly realizing that that the importance, you get more things done in this town, if you're not mortal enemies, if you make friends.
I think they made a rush at trying to break the sequester. They failed. I think the polling numbers have collapsed for the president pretty dramatically. I think 13-point change in 2 weeks. And I suspect they sat and said, we better figure out a new dance because this one ain't working. And I think it's a healthier dance for America if you get Democrats and Republicans actually talking honestly with each other, and it might lead to some significant breakthroughs in a way that could be very powerful.
Which is the stronger party? And I realize that the Democrats are in power, but who's the stronger party?
Who's really strongest is the American people, and I don't mean that.
Actually, I tell you, they keep electing the same logjam.
No, I don't say this in a casual way. I say this as somebody who's been at this business since August of 1958.
Who's counting?
The American people have the ability ultimately. In 2006 they punished the Republicans. In 2010 they punished the Democrats. They have an enormous capacity to send messages when they get their back up and they get angry. The two parties are very balanced. Republicans have 30 governors, 315 electoral votes. They have 24 states, so they have the governors and the legislature, 51% of the country. They have control of the U.S. House. The president has the Senate and he won the presidency. So there's an interesting balance of the two parties right now, and I think the party which breaks loose from this, which will happen eventually, will be the party that looks to the future, listens to the American people, and offers innovative solutions. It won't be an anti-Obama Republican Party, and it won't be an anti-Republican Obama Party. It'll be a party that puts the American people first, and whichever party figures that formula out first is going to end up as a governing majority.
Well, it seems that both parties are sort of angling for the Hispanic vote. The Democratic Party already having it. They're not really looking towards the future.
Yeah.
And I know you've written papers and talking about sort of the pioneers of the future and looking towards new ideas and big ideas. But the two parties seem to instead trying to be, cutting up the pie and seeing, Republicans are trying to do a scramble to get the Hispanic vote, and the Democrats already have it.
No question about it. I mean, the challenge is like playing king of the hill and the other guy's on top of the hill. The Democrats have the advantage with Asian Americans, Latino Americans, and African Americans, and Native Americans. If they can retain that advantage at its current rate, they will be the majority party, no matter what happens to Republicans. If, on the other hand, and I want to give Chairman Reince Priebus a big shout out for this. I mean, he has a very aggressive program underway. He is very serious about it, and he is beginning to try to get across to Republicans. You have to go and visit with people and listen to people and learn from people. If you do that, I think we could easily get our share of the vote up very dramatically.
But I remember prior to the last go-around, I remember you, in fact, you went out to Michigan talking to the Democrats and Republicans on education, and
right.
I sort of had my eye on your campaign. I thought, there he is. He's going around the country doing his new solutions, new ideas, all those things, and trying to talk to both sides of the aisle. But that didn't work out too well.
Look, I think that's a different environment, because if you're outspent 5-1 as I was in Florida, it doesn't matter what your ideas are. You're going to be drowned. I think in the long run for the party, if you look at the governors who are successful, the senators who are successful, they are very much oriented to serving the American people. As I said a while ago, if you look at a Nikki Haley, a Susana Martinez, we have a great potential future as a party. And I think that the challenge for the party is to recognize the old Republican Party isn't going to get there. You've got to really rethink the world we're in. You have to understand the 21st century. And you have to, I think you have to forget red versus blue, get rid of the consultants who don't understand it, and focus on serving 311 million people.
All right, I don't want to ask a dopey question everybody always asks, but since we're talking about this, I'm sort of curious whether or not you have any interest to run again.
I think I'll ask me that in January 2015.
So it's not a no?
It's not a no.
Not a no. Speaker, always nice to see you.
Fun to be with you.
Nice to see you.